Hi guys, Ron Wolf here, and this is part 2 to my What If series, What If Game of Thrones went to 10 seasons. Time we are covering the second half of A Feast for Crows and A Dance with Dragons, and I'm adapting them for Season 6. Last time we did Season 5, where Cersei, Marjorie, Yara, Greyjoy, and Davos all got arrested. Sam, Jaime, and Sansa left familiar places, while Tyrion got taken by Jorah Mormont, and Aegon Targaryen started his invasion. That out of the way, let's begin. To start off season 6, in episode 1, I'll go with Jaime arriving at Riverrun, and basically the whole scene of Jaime confronting the phrase poor siege stays the same. Jaime is going to be a character that stays in basically one place the whole season because he does nothing in it Dance with Dragons. Next is the second part of Cersei 10, where after seeing Cersei getting splashed with water or something like that while in prison, she is told to confess and makes a desperate attempt to get out by sending Jaime a letter begging for her help. We then cut to Brienne, where she finally reaches her destination with members of the Brotherhoods from last season. Then she sees Lady Stoneheart, who was absent last season in this What If series, and Brienne recognizes that she is Catelyn Stark revived. Catelyn takes Brienne and Podrick prisoner, and they are sent to some kind of camp to await trial. Next is Arya 1 from A Dance with Dragons, which covers the tales of Arya Stark while she is blind in Braavos and how she tries to deal with life without them. This might seem quick, but yeah, I gotta move on fast. Next is Arya Hotel 1 from Dance with Dragons, and although we have a few changes, it's Qyburn who brings Gregor Clegane's head to Dorne, making the whole audience think he is dead for now. As for why he goes, it's because Qyburn was sent to do this job by the Small Council, more specifically Kevin Lannister, as he wants to get all of Cersei's uh, pawns out of King's Landing. Moving up north, we see Theon and Ramsay hunting in the woods, where Ramsay tells Theon of the Bolton's plan for Stannis and his father's suspicion that Wyman Manderley is going to betray him despite arresting Davos. Ramsay tells Theon this because Ramsay believes Theon is completely loyal to him. We then cut to Tyrion and Jorah, where after making it past Valyrian, coming to the revelation that Jorah is starting to get grayscale, uh, they are arrested by slave fighters fighting Daenerys, and yeah, it's a big blow to getting to her. We continue in the Free Cities, where Jon Connington and Aegon Targaryen plan their invasion of Westeros, and more specifically, convinces Aegon to land at Griffin's Roost's home and land the Stormlands, because a very weak Stormlands is there with Stannis now in the north and defeated on the Battle of Blackwater Bay. Aegon agrees to this, and Connington departs for the Stormlands to end episode 1. Moving to episode 2 now. This is going to be another introduction episode where we catch up with characters that we didn't see in episode 1, with a few exceptions. Start off with we catch up with Bran, the first time getting a proper scene with him in technically one season, but it's been since season 4, and there aren't many scenes of Bran to adapt here, so what I'm doing is I'm putting the Ned and Benjen fighting in Winterfell scene, and this shows Bran still missing his home. Continuing in the north, Yara Greyjoy is interrogated by Stannis, and for once he is a valuable hostage, and he will keep her by his side. Yara says they won't get any return for her since Euron is king now, and at the end of the sequence, Stannis begins his march and leaves Deepwood Motte. Going to the wall, Jon 8 is next, where instead of Val, it's Tormund that talks to Jon about Hardhome here, and like the actual show, I'm going to keep Jon Snow going to Hardhome with Tormund. However, we don't see Hardhome yet. But before they can leave, Maester Aemon's bones arrive at the wall, and it's from Samwell Tarly, and the whole scene of Maester Aemon's body being burned is still the same. I'm still keeping in the north because there are so many characters to cover, and this time it's Davos. Another character that was shelved last season, but I'm doing the second half of Davos 4 here, where Davos is visited by Wyman Manderley, and there, Manderley reveals his true intention. He wants the Starks back. In exchange for Davos' freedom, Wyman Manderley agrees to support Stannis in the battle against Bolton's by betraying the Boltons if Davos is able to get Rickon Stark. Davos asks where Rickon is, and it's revealed that Rickon is on the island of Skagos. I know Davos finding Rickon will happen only in the Winds of Winter, but it makes zero sense for Davos to try and be in only one episode this season. So I'm going to try and drag out his plot this season and get him to the wall where he was in the show. Moving to Mance Rayder, who doesn't have a POV chapter but needs to stay in the plot to keep his plot relevant. So I have him stopping at Queen's Crone for rest, where he learns of an ongoing situation between Alex Karstark and her uncle, where he learns about the King's Road as well, and is told to follow that road to get to Carhold. Finally, leaving the north, we move south, where Sansa arrives at the Gates of the Moon, and she meets Harry Harding, and he comes off as kind of arrogant. She then talks to Littlefinger about him. We get an introduction to him, and it's revealed that he is heir to the Vale, and Littlefinger wants to use that to his full advantage by killing Robin Arryn. Another character that didn't get a chapter, so I need to place here, is Daenerys. I'm going to have an introduction to Daenerys plot this season where Daenerys informs Hizdahr that they will marry, since the amount of times mentioned in season 5, without killing from the Sons of the Harpy, has passed, and Daario informs her that the last of the second sons from Astapor will be at Meereen in a fortnight. Finally, we catch up with Tyrion and Jorah, where the scene where they're auctioned into slavery is here, and it stays basically the same. And that is it from all the characters that were absent from episode 1. So now I'm going to adapt the chapter set up last episode. The next one is Jon Connington 2, where this chapter contains the Battle of Griffin Zeus, which is very short, and Connington is able to take back his home and sends a raven so that Aegon could come to Westeros and start his invasion. This ends episode 2. The start of episode 3, I'm doing Jaime 6, where Jaime threatens Edmure Tully. However, I'm making some changes. First off, we see Jaime trying to threaten the Blackfish, but when that doesn't work, he threatens Edmure to surround the castle using a trebuchet. Also, there's no Talisa, obviously because she's dead. Edmure does surrender the castle, and Jaime gives the Blackfish a deadline to choose if he'll accept Edmure's surrender. Meanwhile, in King's Landing, I'm adapting Cersei 1 of A Dance with Dragons, where Kevin visits Cersei. Cersei asks if Jaime got her letter, but Kevin says Jaime has not taken Riverrun. Kevin also tells Cersei that Mace Tyrell has reached Dragonstone finally and aims to take it. This sets up the next part where we see Mace Tyrell take Dragonstone for the crown. However, he is wounded greatly, and he basically takes the place of Larys, since I need Larys in the plot because he's heir to Highgarden. Keeping down south, we see Aegon Targaryen arrive in Westeros as he lands in Griffin's Roost after Jon Connington takes it. Aegon and his hand discuss with the next best course of action, and Jon Connington allows him to send a letter to the Dornish. Moving up north, Stannis leaves Deepwood Motte with Yara as his captive, and once again they continue the long march to the King's Road and try to take Winterfell. His men warn Stannis of this, but that'll be a long march, but Stannis doesn't care. Catching up with the other Greyjoy, Theon 5 is next, where Theon is confronted in the crypts of Winterfell over why he betrayed the Starks, and Lady Barbary reveals that although she hated Ned Stark, she is faking her support for the Boltons. Moving over to the other side of the world, after a long journey, Quentyn Martell and the last of the Second Sons arrive in Meereen, and Quentyn proves his loyalty to Daenerys as they finally discuss. Quentyn tells Daenerys of the marriage pact between Arya Martell and Viserys Targaryen, but when Daenerys reveals she is promised to Hizdahr, Quentyn Martell declares she has lost Dorne's support, and he storms out, but he isn't allowed to leave Meereen. Moving to the other important free city, we get Arya 2, where Jaqen H'ghar visits Arya and Braavos, and where he finally tests her with her first assassination. And yeah, Jaqen H'ghar promises her eyesight if she's successful. To end episode 3, we catch up with Brienne of Tarth, where she and Podrick are told about the two choices. Brienne will have hang and die, or choose the sword and lure Jaime Lannister away from Riverrun to the Brotherhood to his death. This shocks Brienne and gives her a really difficult decision, and at the end, Brienne shouts a word which we don't see. To start off episode 4, the cliffhanger of last episode with Brienne and Podrick brought before Lady Stoneheart, and Brienne chooses the sword, and it's declared that she will bring Jaime Lannister to her. Brienne and Podrick leave the Brotherhood, and she is on her way to Riverrun. They're going to be absent for a few episodes. Next, we briefly travel to the Free Cities, where it's the wedding of Daenerys and Hizdahr, and Quentyn Martell still lingers in Meereen. Moving to Tyrion, he and Jorah Mormont are sold into slavery, and they continue their journey to the Free Cities while gossip is around that Daenerys has married Hizdahr, which Jorah refused to believe. Moving to Jaime, he sends Edmure to Riverrun, where he surrenders Riverrun. However, the Blackfish isn't there, and we see him swimming away. Moving up north for one small bit, we follow Bran Stark as he is greenseeing again, and this is where he sees his aunt Lyanna Stark riding a horse in Winterfell, and Bran thinks it's Arya at first. Meanwhile, for Mance Rayder, he visits the Last Hearth to get the information about Arya Stark, and that is his mission. But the Umbers know nothing about Arya Stark, although they tell Mance that they are loyal to the Starks, and when young Rickon came to Last Hearth, they sent him somewhere safe where no one thinks he will be, Skagos. Mance thanks him and sends a letter to the Wall and Melisandre, and then he departs for Carhold to see Alice Karstark. Moving to Victarion Greyjoy, he returns to the islands, having conquered the Shield Islands and ordered himself back there by Euron. He reunites with Euron, and Euron gives him Dragonburner and tells him to go to Essos and tame one of Dany's dragons. It's going to be a while until we see him, probably not even next season. In the last bit, it's Davos leaving White Harbor to go and find the young Rickon Stark to end episode 4. In episode 5, we catch up with Jaime Lannister, or an adaptation of Jaime 7, where Jaime finally receives Cersei's letter, but like in the books, Jaime decides to burn the letter, showing that Jaime has moved on from Cersei. Moving to the other side of the world in Braavos, Arya Stark gets a visit from the Waif, and she is further prepared for her task of killing, and the Waif encourages her and tells her that the cat of the canals will easily be recognized, so Arya adopts a disguise of mercy. Moving up north, Jon Snow is still ruling as Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, but now he finally gets to Hardhome, and the whole scene of Hardhome remains exactly the same. Sorry for putting this off, but I kinda forgot about this one. Lol, sorry. Going to the actual wall now, Shireen and Selyse Baratheon arrive at the wall where they see a reward that Jon Snow's away. Knowing they can't refuse him, Alistair Thorne reluctantly lets them enjoy the protection of the Night's Watch. Staying in the north, Theon talks with fake Arya, where we finally learn that Jane Poole is fake Arya Stark. She begs Theon to help her, but Theon just runs away, much like he did to Sansa in the show. Once again, staying in the north, Mance Rayder finally arrives at Carhold, where he meets Alice Karstark. Mance witnesses Alice's uncle try to arrange to marry her and take her spot as Lord/ruler of Carhold, so Mance Rayder helps her escape and sends her with a horse to the wall. Mance Rayder escapes with her, but instead decides to move south. Moving down south to Aegon's invasion, Jon Connington leaves Griffin Roost for Storm's End. Finally, he intends to march and take it. Aegon watches him leave Griffin's Roost as Connington aims to secure the second major victory of the war. Moving to King's Landing, where once again we see Margaery and Cersei being splashed with water and wine in prison as they are told to confess, but once again neither woman will break. However, in order to get Margaery to confess to the High Sparrow, Larys enters Margaery's cell. Margaery and Larys talk, and as Larys says he will fight for Margaery in Margaery's trial by combat if need be, but Larys also begs Margaery to confess anyway, saying King Tommen grows sadder without his wife. Margaery accepts Larys to be his champion, but will still not confess to a crime she didn't commit. Larys asks about Queen Cersei, to which Margaery spits on the floor, and that ends episode 5. We are now halfway through the season, and in episode 6, we start off with Jon Snow and Tormund arriving back at the wall from Hardhome. It's basically the same scene as in season 5, where Jon lets the wildlings through the wall. This turns the men of the Night's Watch against Jon. We stay with Jon as, when he is talking to Ed, Alice Karstark arrives at the wall. They learn of her plight, and Jon promises their protection for the time being. Keeping in the north, we follow Stannis Baratheon, where he arrives at the Crofters' village. Finally, he decides to camp there until he marches on Winterfell in the Battle of Ice. Finally going south, Jaime Lannister leaves Riverrun, having taken it, but then he sees Brienne of Tarth, and an adaptation of Jaime won from A Dance with Dragons. Jaime follows Brienne as Brienne says she found Sansa Stark, but she is with the Hound. This effectively means that Jaime has gone missing. Moving to Old Town, Samwell Tarly doesn't have any POV chapters left, but to keep him in the story, he gets a lot of books on the Maesters, but when he wants one book, the Maester showing him dodges the question and doesn't give it to him. Sam tells Gilly about this, and Gilly suggests that maybe he doesn't want Sam finding out the information in it. and this leaves some question in the audience's mind. Moving to the Vale, Sansa Stark asks Littlefinger to hold a tourney to get away, figuring out how the heir's true personality and everything about him. Littlefinger agrees to this, and he makes arrangement for the tourney. Moving to King's Landing now, Kevin Lannister is attending a small council meeting where he learns that Jaime has gone missing. Kevin asks about the Lannister army, and his advisor tells him that Bronn is bringing it back to King's Landing. After this, Kevin goes to visit Cersei, where in a partial adaptation of Cersei 1 from A Dance with Dragons, Cersei finally confesses to Kevin and the High Sparrow. They start to plan for Cersei's Walk of Atonement, or the Walk of Shame. Meanwhile, Marine Quentin Martell talks with his companions in Marine. He wishes to go home, but Daenerys won't allow him to go until he bends the knee for Jorah. Quentin then suggests to try and tame a dragon and fly away home while burning all the ships that's tried to stop the escape of the Dornishmen. However, Quentin's companions say the problem of Daenerys letting him into the dragon pit, so Quinlan is stuck for now and has to wait until his time, ending episode 6. Episode 7, we start in Winterfell, where Mance Rayder finally arrives outside the walls of Winterfell and the towns there. There, Mance Rayder passes a message through Winterfell about freeing Arya Stark. This leads into Theon 7, where Theon learns of this plot and finally decides to snap out of Reek after seeing Ramsay torture Jane again. Theon then tells Jane of this plot to try and free her, although she doesn't believe him. Moving over to the Free Cities, Daenerys makes peace with Yunkai finally, after Hizdahr arranged for an agreement where Daenerys will host a feast, then reopen the fighting pits. Barristan tries to persuade Daenerys against this action, but she doesn't listen, saying, "I need Yunkai on my side because of the ships to sail back to Westeros." Meanwhile, Tyrion 11, Tyrion and Jorah Mormont escape the slavers because the lead slaver, Ysene, dies. Keeping in the Free Cities, Victarion Greyjoy is still on his journey towards Daenerys to bring a dragon back to the Iron Islands, and Victarion arrives on the Isle of Cedars, just on the edge of Slavers Bay. Victarion learns that the Dragon Queen has been married, and Victarion states he will kill Hizdahr and pay the iron price for Daenerys to come back to the Iron Islands. Victarion states in a while he will leave the island of the Cedars. The final event in the Free Cities for this episode is Arya Stark. Arya, still without eyesight, manages to find Ralph the Sweetling and uses her disguise as a girl called Mercy to kill him, crossing another name off her list and getting her target. She should be getting her eyesight back in a couple episodes. Meanwhile, at the wall, Jon Snow talks to Alice Karstark, and he has an idea to solve the problem of her uncle by marrying her to Sigorn, a wildling and the new Magnar of the Then. In an adaptation of John 10, Alice Karstark agrees to marry Sigorn, and the two are quickly married. However, this has the side effect of more Night's Watch members, including Alistair Thorne, telling Jon that this could be considering meddling in Westerosi politics. But Jon refutes this. Catching up with Bran, he is still the three-eyed raven watching in Winterfell's past, but this time Bran and the three-eyed raven talk as they watch Lord Rickard Stark talking to Ned about his fostering in the Vale, and says to him not to fight, but if he has to, win. Basically, we got this in the show, and I'm keeping it here. Finally, to end that episode, it's an adaptation of Cersei 2 from A Dance with Dragons. And this is Cersei's Walk of Shame, and it goes on for a long time. It finally ends, like in the show, back with Cersei getting back to the Red Keep, where she reunites with Qyburn, and he introduces her to Robert Strong. We get the same introduction as we did in Season 5. Moving on to Episode 8 now, we have 3 episodes to go, and this is going to be a huge one. This episode starts with Tyrion and Jorah arriving at Meereen, and we get the same scene from the show where Jorah wins day 1 of the fighting pits when they reopen, and he returns to Daenerys' service by bringing Daenerys a gift, being Tyrion. Tyrion and Daenerys meet briefly, but they don't get a proper meeting yet. Slight deviation from the books, but I like how Tyrion and Jorah arrived back at Meereen, and yeah, I'm keeping that. Moving to the north now, Stannis Baratheon summons Justin Massey in a partial adaptation of Asha 3, where Yara overhears Stannis talking to Justin about his plans to take Winterfell. He tells him about his plan for the Battle of Ice coming soon and instructs him to to go to Bravos and get 20k cell swords to fight for Stannis or Shireen. Justin tries to argue, but Stannis calls him down, and this is all overheard by Yara Greyjoy, still Stannis' prisoner. Moving to Stannis' opponents in Winterfell, Theon finally gets the courage to break out of Reek and seizes the opportunity of Ramsay and Roose going hunting to free fake Arya Stark and to escape Winterfell with Mance Rayder's help. Mance holds off the Bolton soldiers trying to capture them, just enough time for the two to escape. And Mance also tells them that Stannis is camped at the Crofters' village before Mance is taken by the Bolton soldiers. However, Arya and Theon get away. Moving further up north of the wall, Jon summons Ed to his chambers, and he tells Ed that he will accompany Alice Karstark to Carhold and ensure she gets there safely. Ed asks why him, and Jon says that he trusts him most out of everyone, and Ed leaves and Alice Karstark enters. And she tells Jon that Arnulf Karstark plans to betray Stannis, so Jon writes a letter and sends one of the Baratheon at the wall, protecting the queen, to give it to Stannis himself. That draws a connection between Ned and Jon. Further, speaking of the other members in Stannis' camp, Davos. In episode 4, Davos left White Harbor and he finally arrives at Skagos in search for Rickon Stark, and more or less he's getting a Tyrion Season 1 plot. What I mean is, when Davos lands, he does find Rickon Stark and Osha briefly, and he briefly interacts with them, but Davos is taken prisoner by the various clansmen to which Rickon is with. But Davos isn't dead, and he is brought to the leader before facing judge. He has to be brought to their leader before bringing judgment. Finally, we go south to Dorne, where Aegon's letter to Dorne finally has been received there, and Doran Martell reads it to Arianne, saying they want to parley. Martell reveals he's been waiting a long game for justice, and he sends Arianne to negotiate with Aegon. She will leave in a couple of days, and after this, Doran Martell visits the Sand Stakes and explains that Nymeria and Tyene Sand will go to King's Landing, and Doran says that during the whole prison saga, Kevan Lannister tried to restore the Lannisters' reputation with their allies, and he agreed with Doran to send the Sand Snakes to King's Landing, with Nymeria placing Oberyn on the small council, while the other Sand Snake serves as Nymeria's protector. Meanwhile, Obara Sand will accompany Arianne to Griffin's Roost, although not by ship, in order not to draw suspicion. He orders Nymeria and Tyene not to kill Tommen, just to get a feel for the king. However, if he causes trouble, kill him. The Sand Snakes agree and leave. Meanwhile, moving to the Free Cities, Arya Stark meets with Jaqen H'ghar, and she gets her eyes back finally. Finally, to end the episode, we cut to the Red Keep, where we see a bunch of Cersei's men getting arrested, and cutting to a small council meeting, where Cersei returns to the small council and asks why the Kettle Blacks are being arrested and men like them, and Kevan responds simply to protect them from the faith. Cersei argues, but Kevan is having none of it, and Kevan then reveals one of Oberyn's daughters will be joining the small council, and the meeting is dismissed. Afterwards, Cersei meets Qyburn, who reveals that Robert Strong is in fact the Mountain Gregor Clegane. A lot of important stuff happened in this episode, and now moving on to episode 9, we just have 2 episodes to go in the season. We start off in Dorne, where an adaptation of Arianne 1 from the Winds of Winter, a confirmed chapter, where basically in this chapter, Arianne leaves Dorne, but I'm having not via ship, as she has a long journey to get to Weil, where she'll be able to catch a ship there. She'll be able to catch a ship from the Tor to Weil, shortening the journey to Griffin's Roost, meeting Aegon. Moving further up north, but not all the way north, it's just the Battle of Storm's End between Stannis Baratheon's Castellan and Jon Connington trying to take it for Aegon. In the battle, Jon Connington wins and takes it from Stannis. Moving to Braavos now. Arya is floating around Braavos, but when Ralph the Sweetling is found dead, Arya drops her disguise as Mercy and runs away to the Iron Bank of Braavos, where we see envoys of the Crown at Aegon's camp. And this will be important for next season, as Arya gets a job with the Iron Bank of Braavos. Moving to the other major city, Meereen, in another day of the fighting pits, in an adaptation of Daenerys 9, or at least the first part of it, the Sons of the Harpy strike again, this time trying to kill Daenerys herself. And the Masters have disappeared, but then Drogon flies in and brings Daenerys away. Meanwhile, in the fighting pits, Uh, Jorah, Dario, Barristan, and Grey Worm help to escort Tyrion and Missandei back to their quarters, and they do so. And afterwards, Barristan talks to Quentyn Martell, who asks if he has leave to go, but Barristan commands that he stay, saying that Daenerys ordered him to stay, and they need Dorne now more than ever. Quentyn Martell is very upset at this news. Moving to Skagos, Davos is visited by Rickon and Osha, and Rickon asks who he is, and Davos explains he is an envoy of Stannis Baratheon sent to the Manderleys to try and get Rickon out of Skagos. I lost my part of the script, sorry. And Rickon says, "My family's gone, the Boltons hold Winterfell, and there's no hope." Davos tries to tell him that Stannis' army is trying to take back Winterfell from the Boltons and retrieve Arya Stark. Osha asks them about Arya Stark, and Davos explains that she was found in King's Landing before being married to Ramsay Bolton. Davos says if Stannis gets a male Stark, that doesn't even have to fight. The Manderleys and other northern houses will support Stannis, along with most of the other northern houses, of course. Osha and Rickon respond by leaving, although with a lot to think about. Moving to just outside of Winterfell, Theon and Jane have around a day's journey to the Crofters' village where Stannis is at. Jane asks if she shows to be Arya Stark, and Theon says yes, if you want to be safe and the Starks to be back. They make cross the river and make camp and stop for the night. Moving back into Winterfell, Roose and Ramsay get back from hunting and they realize Theon and fake Arya are gone. Then, some Bolton soldiers bring Mance Rayder towards them, and Ramsay gets permission to bring him into the dungeons, while Roose Bolton has a mace right to the Freys, asking for their support to hold the North. Wow, without Arya, the other northern houses support Stannis, and Ramsay gets permission to write a letter to Jon, but the letter is pink. Mance Rayder is dragged into the dungeons where he sees a red X. Moving up north, Jon Snow is commanding a wall when he gets a letter from the Boltons. Jon reads it, and it's out to Ollie. "Bastard, I have your sister, Arya, my wife, and I have defeated Stannis and took his sword. Bend the knee, and your sister won't be harmed." This is the straw that breaks Jon, and after hearing that Arya is married to the Boltons, Jon decides to lead the Night's Watch and the Wildlings to take back Winterfell. Ollie is to tell the Watch, and Ollie does so and tells Alliser and Thorne is upset and says, "Very well, you will deal with this threat," and it cuts away to King's Landing. After a small council meeting, Kevan Lannister confronts Cersei over why she is so quiet, apparently washing herself 5 times a day, and Cersei says, "I'm fine. Thanks for your concern, Uncle." Kevan Lannister then sees a child outside the chambers and asks why he is here, and he says that it's Grandmaster Pycelle. And the child leads Kevan Lannister down the stairs into the black cells and into the tunnels of the Red Keep, where he finds Pycelle dead, and Kevan notices the child is gone and asks Tyrion, "Where are you? Was this you?" "No, my lord. He is not here," comes a chilling reply, and Varys appears from the shadows, living from the walls of the Red Keep for over a year. Varys says, "It's a shame that it has to come to this, my lord, but I serve the people, and you were repairing House Lannister's reputation too well." Kevan tries to flee, but Varys shoots him with a crossbow and leaves a Tyrell coin on Kevan's body, ending the episode. In the season finale, I'm starting with Bran Stark, where Bran and the Three-Eyed Raven witness the creation of the Night King, like in the actual show. After that, Bran stops worrying as he gets mad at the Children of the Forest, who respond with they created the Night King to protect them from humans. Bran is shocked. Moving over to Sansa Stark, a bunch of people are at the tourney and dance, and once again, Sansa dances with Harry the Heir and flirts with him, and Harry fully falls in love. Afterwards, Sansa tells Littlefinger that he can be very easily manipulated. Moving to King's Landing, Kevan Lannister's body is found, and Cersei finds the Tyrell coin on him, and she is extremely mad over this, her rage starting to be unleashed again. However, she is unable to do anything, and as at the small council meeting, she finds herself having lost a lot of power, full of Tyrell supporters. However, Tommen visits her at Kevan's funeral, and they reconcile after a long talk. Finally, up north, Theon Greyjoy and fake Arya arrive at the Crofters' village, and they are taken captive. Fake Arya and Theon are brought before Stannis, and Theon explains that he has three young Greyjoy and this is Arya Stark. Stannis is Arya freed while Theon is sent to a camp. Yara watches as his brother gets taken to prison. Meanwhile, Stannis talks to fake Arya and asks if she is okay, and she says she is, and she's taken to a tent while Stannis commands Justin Massey to bring Arya Stark to the wall before leaving for Braavos. Meanwhile, in Winterfell, we see Ramsay being torturing Mance Rayder for information, but when he refuses to give it, Ramsay kills Mance Rayder, ending his life. Moving to Skagos, Davos is sleeping in his cell when someone walks in and frees him. It's Osha and Rickon Stark. Osha says they're getting off the island and joining Stannis. We then get an epic sequence of Osha, Rickon, and Davos running to the edge of Skagos, and then at the last second before they are taken by the clansmen, escaping Skagos and on their way to White Harbor. Moving to the Free City, Daenerys finally lands with Drogon before he snaps at her and then flies away again. And then she hears screaming and the Dothraki are there, and Daenerys drops some jewelry before being taken away by the Dothraki. After that, we get to Meereen, where Quentyn Martell wakes up in the middle of the night, tries to sneak in the dragon pit where Rhaegar and Viserion are. However, Quentyn tries to tame them, but he dies in the process, being burned alive. A sad death for a child. Meanwhile, at the Wall, Jon Snow is preparing to take Winterfell when Olly walks in. Lord Commander, the wildlings, they know where your uncle is. Jon rushes outside, but all he finds is the men gathering around the sign saying traitor. Jon turns around and then is stabbed by the Watch. Jon Snow is dead. That is it for me, and until next time, bye.